It was Christmas night, the streets glowing like sugar-dusted dreams. Snow fell gently over the bustling city, blanketing the sidewalks, curling around street lamps, and painting every window with a quiet magic. Eliza Hart, billionaire businesswoman, adjusted her scarf and walked briskly down the festive avenue, the soft click of her heels mingling with distant carols. Her mind was elsewhere: balance sheets, holiday charity events, investor calls. But the city had a way of slowing even the busiest heart. Then she saw him. A man, young, no older than 24, crouched near a dumpster behind a tiny shuttered cafe. His clothes were tattered, frozen patches clinging to threadbare fabric, and his hands moved carefully over discarded food containers. There was something about the precision in his movements that made him different from every other person she had seen in hardship. He wasn't desperate in the panicked, chaotic way people usually were. No, there was a quiet dignity in his search, a careful deliberation, as if he were choosing not just what to eat, but what to survive. Her breath caught. Normally she walked past. Normally she didn't involve herself. But something, an unnameable, insistent tug, made her pause. She studied him. His face, partially hidden under a woolen hat, was sharp, thin, and pale from cold. Eyes dark and wary, scanning the street as if expecting judgment, confrontation, or worse. "Sir?" she called softly, hesitating. Her voice, hesitant yet firm, cut through the quiet hum of the snowy night. He looked up, startled, and for a moment their eyes met. There was a flicker of surprise, almost disbelief, that she, someone clearly wealthy, had noticed him. Then came caution, the way someone who had been invisible for far too long looks at the world. What are you doing?" Her words stumbled. She felt absurd standing there, scarf half undone, luxury coat dusted with snow, talking to a man digging through trash. "I'm not stealing," he said quietly. The voice was soft, measured, almost rehearsed. "I just need something to eat." Her mind froze. Normally people would beg, plead, exaggerate, or lash out. Not him. Not this young man, who spoke as if dignity was more valuable than desperation. She noticed a small, battered notebook clutched under his arm. Not a wallet, not a phone. Something personal, sacred. The corner of the cover was dog-eared. The spine was nearly split. "It looked old, cherished. Is that yours?" she asked. He nodded, eyes flicking down, hesitant to share more. "Recipes," he muttered. "Old ones. Recipes." Her curiosity deepened. She had always admired talent, precision, craft, but here, in the cold and shadows of a city that celebrated excess, she was staring at a young man whose life had clearly gone sideways, but whose hands and heart were still capable of creation. A snowflake landed on his hat. He shivered, and instinctively her hand itched to offer her scarf. But the city was watching, and the night was alive with judgment. Normally she didn't intervene, but her gut, the quiet voice she rarely listened to, whispered, "Do something." And then he spoke again. "Do you want some?" he asked suddenly, his voice carrying a gentle, almost shy courage. He gestured to the few scraps he had gathered from the dumpster. Eliza froze. Not because of the offer, but because of its audacity. Here was a man, barely surviving, offering what little he had to a stranger. That single act, small, unnoticed, profound, shifted something deep inside her, and before she realized it, she was walking closer. Not with the judgment of wealth, not with the detachment of someone above it all. She walked with curiosity, with caution, with the faintest spark of empathy. "Come with me," she said, almost before she thought it. I'll help you get something warm." He hesitated, wary. Years of being overlooked and dismissed hadn't prepared him for this. But something in her eyes, genuine, unguarded, made him nod. Slowly, deliberately, he followed her. Snow swirled around them. The bright lights of the city reflected off icy sidewalks, creating halos around their feet. The distant sounds of laughter, bells, and car engines contrasted sharply with the quiet intensity between the two strangers. She couldn't help but glance at the notebook again. She didn't ask questions. Yet. They walked to a nearby cafe, the warm golden light spilling over frosted windows. Inside, a few late customers nursed mugs of cocoa, oblivious to the small miracle unfolding just outside. The young man, Matthew, allowed her to guide him to a table. The way he folded his hands, careful not to touch anything, spoke volumes. He had been invisible, discarded, ignored, but still he retained an unspoken code of respect. "You, want some cocoa?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. He nodded again, faint smile cracking the frozen mask he wore. "Thank you," he said softly. And just like that, the first thread of connection was woven, a fragile bridge across a chasm of wealth, hunger, and pride. For Eliza, that night was supposed to be routine. A quiet walk home, dinner, maybe an early night before the holiday gala. Instead, she had met someone who would change everything. Someone whose words, whose life, whose dignity would challenge her, humble her, and ultimately awaken her heart. And as she watched Matthew take a careful sip of cocoa, notebook pressed to his chest like a shield, she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Eliza watched Matthew closely as he sat in the warmth of the cafe. The steam from his cocoa rising like a fragile veil between them, every detail of his posture, his gestures, whispered a story of survival. His hands were careful, precise, almost like he was tracing invisible lines in the air before touching anything. Even the way he held the notebook suggested reverence, as if it were a lifeline. Finally, she asked softly, "Why the streets? Why tonight of all nights?" He glanced down, eyes shadowed. "I don't really have a choice." Her curiosity deepened, but she didn't push. She had learned long ago that people revealed truths only when they were ready. And Matthew, something told her, was ready, or close to it. He shifted in his seat. "I used to cook," he said quietly. "I had a job. A real one. Chef's assistant at a downtown restaurant. Not glamorous, but I loved it." His fingers drummed lightly against the notebook, almost unconsciously. "Then, things went wrong." Eliza leaned forward, sensing the weight behind his words. She didn't interrupt. She let him speak. "I had this idea. Recipes, flavor combinations nobody else was trying. I worked nights, experimented, pushed myself." The chef noticed. He liked some of my dishes. His jaw tightened. But one of my co-workers, older, well-connected, he took my recipe. Entered it in a competition, got the credit. I spoke up. I fought for it. But the people in power, they didn't care. I was accused of stealing, humiliated, fired. The press, they made it worse. Young chef plagiarizes. My name everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Eliza felt her chest tighten. She had seen ambition crushed, people overlooked, but she had never heard a story carried with such quiet dignity. There was no whining here, no bitterness, just the raw, silent ache of injustice. "I lost everything after that," he continued. "No place to stay, family. Stopped answering. Friends disappeared. I couch-surfed for a while, then nothing." His voice cracked slightly and he pressed his lips together to stop it. Eliza felt a lump form in her throat. She had the power to fix many things, but money alone wouldn't erase the scars etched deep into a person's life. "You didn't deserve any of that," she said softly. He shrugged. "Maybe not, but that's life, isn't it? People look away, people judge, and somehow I'm supposed to just vanish." A silence fell between them, heavy and charged. The cafe's warmth couldn't reach the cold shadow that clung to him. Eliza wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but more than that, she wanted to understand. She wanted to see the person beneath the exhaustion and the misfortune. "Show me," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Your notebook. Your recipes. Let me see what you've been holding on to." Matthew hesitated, eyes flicking to hers, measuring, calculating. Finally, he opened the notebook, revealing pages of neat handwriting, scribbles, corrections, and annotations. Some were elegant cursive, others rushed, messy, proof of sleepless nights, frantic experimentation. There were sketches, diagrams, ingredient lists, even tiny doodles of hearts beside certain recipes. "Food isn't just food," he murmured. "It's memory. It's hope. It's something to survive by." Eliza felt a shiver run down her spine. She knew that feeling intimately. The world could strip away comfort, status, recognition. But when a passion, a skill, or a dream was all you had left, it became sacred. She studied him. Every scar, Every tremor, every carefully chosen word was a story she hadn't expected to inherit on a Christmas night. Here, in the shadow of the city's twinkling lights, she realized she was no longer just an observer. She was part of this story now. "Do you want help?" she asked cautiously. Not charity, not pity. Help. Opportunity. Recognition. Restoration. Matthew's eyes widened slightly. Suspicion, hope, disbelief, all at once. I don't know, Eliza smiled faintly. You don't have to decide now, but you don't have to vanish anymore. The moment hung between them. Outside, snowflakes continued to swirl, coating the city in silence and light. The distant laughter of families contrasted sharply with the quiet desperation at their table, yet somehow it felt balanced. Life, unfair and messy, still held moments of magic, if you were brave enough to step into them. Then came a sound that neither expected, the faint jingle of bells from a nearby church, ringing in the midnight hour. It was subtle, but enough to crack open something tender in Matthew. He shifted, hesitated, then spoke. I've never had anyone care like this before. Not really. Not since everything happened. Eliza leaned back, careful, letting the words sink in. This was the turning point. The moment before the first choice. The moment before life tilted irrevocably. Then let me care, she said simply. Let me help you reclaim what you've lost. Not because it's Christmas, not because I feel sorry, but because you deserve it. Your talent, your life. You deserve it. Matthew's lips trembled, a smile trying to form. But it was shadowed with fear. People will judge. They'll say that I'm using you, that I'm after your money, your influence. They'll ruin it before I can even start. Eliza's gaze hardened. Then let them. You'll start anyway, because your life, your story, is bigger than what they say, bigger than their judgment, bigger than this night, this snow, this moment. You're still here. That's all that matters. The words sank into him like sunlight into frozen ground. Something shifted. The air between them warmed, carrying more than cocoa steam. It carried possibility, redemption, trust. For the first time in months, perhaps years, Matthew allowed himself to breathe a little easier. He leaned back, opened his notebook fully, and started to explain. Recipes, inspirations, failures, small victories. Every page was a testament to survival, creativity, and quiet determination. Eliza listened, fascinated. She felt a spark she hadn't felt in years, the thrill of seeing potential in raw form, untamed, unacknowledged. She realized then that helping him wasn't just charity. It was justice. It was acknowledgement. It was life restored. Hours passed unnoticed. Outside, the snow thickened, blanketing the streets, muffling sounds. Inside, two strangers connected over stories, dreams, and the fragile warmth of hope. By the time Matthew closed the notebook, it felt heavier somehow. Not with weight, but with significance. Eliza could see it. The years of survival, the courage it took to protect pride while hungry, the brilliance hidden under hardship. Tomorrow, she said quietly, we start. No judgment, no expectations, just you, your skills, and a chance to rebuild. Matthew looked at her, and for the first time his fear faltered. In its place, something new, trust. And then, before either of them realized, the cafe's door opened, letting in a gust of cold night air. People came and went, oblivious to the quiet miracle in the corner. But the two of them, billionaire and homeless chef, were no longer just strangers. They were allies, co-authors of the next chapter, standing on the threshold of something neither could yet name. The snow had melted into the city streets by morning, leaving the sidewalks slick and reflective, like mirrors holding fragments of the night before. Matthew walked carefully, the notebook tucked tightly under his arm, every step a reminder of vulnerability. He had survived the cold, the hunger, the public humiliation, but nothing had prepared him for the world outside that cafe. Eliza had offered to help, but she also warned him. People talk. The press, social media, they're relentless. You're stepping into a spotlight whether you want it or not. Matthew had nodded, his jaw tight. He didn't care about their judgment. What mattered was reclaiming what had been stolen from him, his skills, his dignity, his life. But even he couldn't ignore the quiet dread rising in his chest as he reached the first checkpoint, the cafe's front step. Where a photographer loitered, camera poised. The shutter clicked before he even noticed, capturing him with the notebook, a moment meant to be private, now public. By noon, the photos were online. Headlines blared across devices like a series of tiny explosions. Homeless chef gets lift from billionaire influencer? Scandal or charity? Millionaire woman and mysterious street cook, using kindness as a brand? The debate heats up. Matthew stared at the screen in disbelief. His notebook, the one tangible proof of his life's work, had become an emblem in someone else's story. Comments flooded in, each one a new layer of scrutiny, mockery, or suspicion. Gold digger alert. This is obviously staged. She's just using him. And yet, scattered among the derision were voices of hope. He deserves this chance. Finally, someone sees his talent. The mixture of hatred and support made his chest tighten. Each comment chipped at him, revealing insecurities he had buried deep during months on the streets. Eliza sat beside him, her calm a shield against the chaos. "Ignore them," she said. But even she knew that would be impossible. The world's gaze was unavoidable once unleashed. Focus on the work. The cookbook, the recipes, that's what matters. Matthew took a shaky breath and opened the notebook. He scanned the pages, trying to drown out the virtual noise. But the comments lingered like shadows, threatening to make him doubt himself. He turned a page and froze. One of his earliest recipes, the one that had earned him initial praise in the restaurant, was there. The handwriting uneven, notes scratched in hurried lines. Memories of nights spent perfecting it surged back. Humiliation, betrayal, the nights on the sidewalk with only a notebook and a hope for warmth. This was the first real turning point. He realized the world would judge him no matter what, but he could control how he responded. The opportunity, the recognition, the chance to rebuild, it had arrived. But it came wrapped in scrutiny. By afternoon, the first email arrived from a publisher. She had noticed the photos, the story, and most importantly, the notebook. "We see talent. Real talent. Let's bring it to the world." Matthew's hands trembled as he read it. This was validation, but it was also pressure. He had to deliver, to prove he deserved the spotlight, and he had to do it fast. Eliza encouraged him, reminding him to focus on skill over reputation, mastery over judgment. But even she couldn't erase the whispers, the stares, the cameras clicking when they least expected it. That evening, he found himself on a live social media stream. A well-known influencer had picked up the story, broadcasting him holding the notebook, attempting to cook a simple recipe. Comments poured in, some supportive, many cruel. Why is she helping him? Obvious scam. He looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. Street chef trying to play rich now. Matthew's hands shook as he diced onions on camera. Each cut precise, yet every movement scrutinized. The weight of judgment pressed against him, threatening to crumble the progress he had made. Then a sudden comment. "Wait. He's really good, that soup. It looks perfect." The tide shifted subtly. Momentum swung toward admiration, just as quickly as it had leaned toward ridicule. Matthew realized something vital. The world would judge, yes, but skill, talent, and authenticity could drown out the noise. He had only to stay true to his craft. The climax of this section came the next morning. A popular food blog published an article, "From Streets to Stars, the Homeless Chef Who Could Teach the World." The headline spread like wildfire. The narrative flipped, the story reframed. Support, praise, and even offers began to flow in. Publishers, restaurants, and culinary influencers reached out, drawn to the authenticity, the story, the talent. Matthew felt a surge of something he hadn't in months. Control. The chaos outside couldn't touch the truth inside the notebook, inside him. The world could whisper, mock, or applaud, but the reality of his talent, his dedication, remained untouched. Eliza stood beside him, smiling softly. "See, they were waiting for this," she said. "Not the story, the truth. They can't ignore the skill." Matthew nodded, determination replacing the fear. He realized that this was only the beginning. Exposure had forced him into the light, but now he had the chance to define his path, to rebuild life on his terms. The retention hook for the next section. The first real test of Matthew's resilience would arrive in the form of a high-stakes cooking competition. Televised where judgment wasn't virtual, it was live. Unforgiving and irrevocable. Success meant validation, opportunity, and redemption. Failure would test whether he could survive the spotlight and remain true to himself. Milled around, cameras flashing intermittently, capturing every nervous glance, every shaky step. His notebook rested in his bag, a talisman against doubt. This wasn't just another chance. It was the chance. A nationally televised cooking competition. Judges included some of the most formidable names in the culinary world. Celebrity chefs with ruthless reputations, critics with pens sharper than knives, and former prodigies who'd risen and fallen under the same spotlight. One misstep, and the world would judge him again, but this time live. He took a deep breath. Eliza's words echoed in his mind. Remember who you are. Skill over spectacle. The arena was a whirlwind of stainless steel stations, sizzling pans, and buzzing cameras. Contestants scurried, their faces a mix of focus, anxiety, and determination. Matthew's hands shook as he set up his station, knives aligned, ingredients prepped. Notebook tucked safely in his apron pocket. Across the room, a rival caught his eye, Julian, a former sous chef turned television personality, with a smug grin that seemed permanently etched on his face. Julian had already spotted Matthew sneering subtly. "Street kid in the big leagues," he muttered to a fellow contestant. Loud enough for Matthew to hear. Matthew ignored him, focusing instead on the task at hand, create a signature dish that would impress both the judges and a skeptical audience. The first challenge was announced. A 3-course meal showcasing ingenuity, flavor, and presentation, all in 90 minutes. The countdown began. Matthew's heart hammered, but his hands moved with a fluidity born of years of unseen practice. He chopped, sautéed, and seasoned with precision, drawing on techniques learned during nights of improvisation when there was nothing but a few scraps and imagination. Julian, meanwhile, wasted no time in taunting. "Careful with that knife, rookie," he sneered, loud enough for cameras to pick up. Matthew's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he let the simmering aromas speak for him. Time ticked down. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he plated the appetizer, a delicate composition of roasted root vegetables with a subtle aromatic glaze. His entree followed, pan-seared fish with a reduction sauce that shimmered like liquid gold. Dessert came last, a simple yet elegant apple tart, glazed with a finesse that betrayed months of careful, unnoticed practice. The judges approached. Matthew felt their eyes, sharp and calculating, cutting through the layers of seasoning and technique. Each bite was a test, every nod or frown a silent verdict. He held his breath. Then something remarkable happened. The head judge, Chef Lorraine, raised an eyebrow, a subtle signal of intrigue. She tasted the appetizer slowly, eyes narrowing, then widened slightly. She moved to the entree, a small smile tugging at her lips. By the time she reached the dessert, her expression had softened into something almost astonished. Julian's attempt was bold but messy. Flamboyant sauces, overcooked meats, and a presentation that, while dramatic, seemed forced. The judges whispered among themselves, casting occasional glances at Matthew. He noticed, but he didn't falter. Finally, the verdict was announced. Matthew had impressed the judges, his dishes praised for precision, creativity, and soul. Julian's flamboyance earned attention but not admiration. Matthew's heart soared. Validation, not just of skill, but of resilience. Yet the competition wasn't over. A twist came. The second challenge was a team event, pairing contestants with strangers from the audience. Matthew's partner was a young culinary student, nervous and inexperienced. He took the lead gently, guiding without overshadowing, teaching without preaching. The challenge was not only about cooking, it was about leadership, empathy, and adaptability. As the team plated their dish, the audience erupted. Matthew's calm, focused demeanor had not only carried him through pressure, but had elevated his partner. The judges nodded in approval, praising his mentorship as much as his culinary talent. The final twist, a live vote from the audience, streamed nationwide. Matthew's story, the homeless chef turned rising star, resonated. Viewers saw authenticity, skill, and heart. Social media buzzed, Hashtags trending, news feeds flooded with support, street chef nails competition. Real talent, real heart. From the streets to the stars. When his name was announced as the winner, the arena erupted. Matthew felt a rush unlike any before, not just triumph, but vindication. He had survived scrutiny, judgment, and doubt. He had been tested, and he had risen. Backstage, cameras still rolling, Julian approached, eyes begrudgingly respectful. You earned this, he admitted, extending a hand. Matthew shook it firmly, a silent acknowledgement of a hard-fought victory. But the real reward awaited elsewhere. A publisher had secured a deal for his cookbook. His recipes, once scribbled in a battered notebook, would now reach homes across the country. The notebook, once a symbol of hardship, had become a beacon of hope. Later that night, Matthew returned to his apartment, the city lights glimmering like tiny stars. He sat by the window, notebook open, reflecting on the journey. The cold streets, the judgment, the exposure, the competition, and now triumph. Every setback had been a stepping stone, every scornful glance a challenge to rise higher. And through it all, the thread remained. Resilience, skill, and authenticity could defy the harshest judgment. The world could doubt him, but he could never doubt himself. As he penned new recipes, already envisioning his first published page, he knew this was more than victory. It was a statement, a promise. No matter how far life had pushed him down, he would rise. Not for fame, not for recognition, but because talent, heart, and perseverance could never be denied. The retention hook for the next section, the story's emotional apex. Matthew reconnects with the woman who gave him hope, now a celebrated mentor, leading to the ultimate reunion that closes the arc. The morning light was soft, spilling through the wide windows of the community kitchen. Flour dusted the wooden countertops, and the scent of baked bread mingled with the faint tang of fresh herbs. Matthew moved quietly, adjusting the placement of ingredients for the day's class. It had been months since his televised victory. His cookbook was flying off shelves, social media buzzing with messages of admiration, and culinary students sought his guidance. Yet despite the success, a hollow ache lingered, a missing piece. He hadn't seen her since the night of the gala, the woman who had first inspired him, the stranger who had seen worth in him when the world had dismissed him. The bell above the kitchen door jingled. Heads turned, knives paused mid-chop. Matthew looked up. She stood there, hesitating, hands gripping the strap of a worn bag. Her hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, and her coat, once threadbare and ragged, had been replaced by a simple, practical jacket. Recognition sparked in Matthew's chest. It was her, the woman whose recipes, guidance, and gentle presence had changed his life. She stepped forward cautiously. I didn't know if it was okay to come, she said softly, voice trembling. Matthew's heart lifted and tightened all at once. It's more than okay. You've been missed, he said, moving toward her, leaving the students to manage the prep for a moment. A shy smile tugged at her lips, a mix of relief and disbelief. She had spent months building courage, weighing the fear of intrusion against the need for connection. Now, standing here, she realized the risk had been worth it. Matthew extended his hand. She hesitated, then took it. That simple contact bridged months of distance, doubt, and longing. Come, Matthew said, guiding her to a small table. You've been a teacher here, even if you didn't know it. Now it's time to come back fully. She sat, eyes scanning the room. Young students, eager and bright, had gathered around watching the exchange. Their curiosity was palpable, yet respectful. Matthew's voice rose slightly, explaining who she was. This is Brenda. She's the one who inspired me to believe in my own skill. Her story, it's remarkable. Whispers ran through the group, admiration mixing with awe. You're the chef from the news? A student asked, eyes wide. Brenda laughed softly, shaking her head. No, not that. Just someone who loves cooking. That's all. The class began. Brenda moved instinctively, teaching with a calm, confident grace that mesmerized the students. Her hands guided hesitant fingers, demonstrating techniques with quiet patience. Every gesture spoke of someone who had learned through struggle, who had honed not just skill, but empathy. Matthew watched her, marveling at the ease with which she led. It was as if the months apart had only strengthened her presence. The classroom buzzed with creativity, flowers swirling like tiny snowflakes in the golden morning light. After the session, Matthew and Brenda stood alone in the kitchen, the students having left for lunch. Silence hung briefly, comfortable yet charged. "You've done so much," Matthew said, voice low. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone." Brenda met his gaze, eyes soft but steady. "And I didn't realize how much I needed to be here," she replied. Her hands rested on the counter, fingers tracing the wood grain as though grounding herself. A pause. Then Matthew spoke, voice catching slightly. "I never told you this. The first night you came to my house, I was frozen, scared. But seeing you, seeing how you cared, it made me remember what it's like to feel again, to hope." Brenda's lips curved in a small smile. "I thought I was the one being saved," she murmured. "But you saved me too." "From doubt, from fear. You reminded me that skill, heart, and honesty matter more than circumstance." He stepped closer, gently taking her hand. "We both deserved a second chance. And I think we're finally in the right place to take it." A soft bell chimed outside. Through the large windows, the courtyard gleamed under winter sunlight, freshly dusted with snow. Children played nearby, their laughter carrying on the crisp air. The neighborhood had begun embracing the community kitchen, coming together in ways Matthew hadn't imagined. Brenda's eyes followed the scene, expression contemplative. "I never imagined something like this," she said. "From the streets to this," Matthew squeezed her hand. "From survival to thriving. Not just for us, but for everyone we can reach." The day faded into evening, golden light filtering through the windows, casting long, warm shadows. Dinner preparations began, a feast for the staff and volunteers who had kept the kitchen running. Brenda moved seamlessly, orchestrating the flow of activity with precision and care. Matthew assisted when needed, grateful for her presence, her guidance, and the quiet strength she exuded. Later, as the night deepened and the last dishes were cleared, Matthew and Brenda stood at the doorway, looking out at the softly falling snow. The air was crisp, sparkling, as if the world itself had been cleansed and renewed. "You belong here," Matthew said softly, turning to her. "With me, with this kitchen, with everything we're building." Brenda hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing her features. Then slowly, a smile broke through, radiant and sincere. I'm ready to stay," she whispered. Matthew reached out, pulling her into an embrace, careful yet firm. For the first time in months, all the tension, fear, and uncertainty melted away. The warmth of connection, of trust, of shared purpose filled the space between them. Weeks turned into months. The kitchen became a hub, not just for meals, but for mentorship, storytelling, and community. Brenda taught young chefs, guided them with the same patience she had shown Matthew, instilling both skill and confidence. Every recipe, every lesson carried echoes of her journey, resilience, ingenuity, and heart. Matthew watched. Quietly proud as her confidence grew, her smile became easier, and her laughter filled spaces that had long been silent. Their bond deepened, not through grand gestures or declarations, but through daily acts of care, mutual respect, and the shared joy of building something meaningful together. One evening, as twilight bathed the city in a soft violet hue, Matthew and Brenda stood outside the kitchen, holding hands. The snow glimmered faintly, reflecting streetlights and the quiet glow of lanterns. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Brenda asked softly. Matthew nodded. "Every day. I don't think I'd be here without you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And I wouldn't be me without you reminding me I mattered." They stood together in silence, the world around them fading into the background. The past, with all its hardship, humiliation, and doubt, felt distant. Ahead lay promise, partnership, and purpose. The journey had been long and hard, but the reward, connection, respect, and love, was immeasurable. Brenda finally spoke, voice steady. "So, what now?" Matthew smiled, warmth in his eyes. "Now we keep building. For ourselves, for the kids, for everyone who's been overlooked. We take the lessons, the failures, and the love, and we turn them into something lasting." She smiled back, eyes glistening, a quiet determination reflected in her gaze. Then let's do it. Together. As they walked back into the warmth of the kitchen, the night wrapped around the city like a gentle promise. The lights from the building spilled into the street, golden and inviting, a beacon of hope and new beginnings. Inside, the students worked. The kitchen hummed with energy, and the aroma of fresh bread and roasted vegetables filled the air. Matthew and Brenda moved through the space, hands brushing occasionally, smiles shared in quiet understanding. Their past struggles were no longer shackles. They were the foundation of the life they were creating. And outside, in the snow-dusted world, the city felt alive with possibility. The story of a homeless chef who reclaimed her life, and a young man who found his purpose through resilience and love, had come full circle. A new chapter had begun, not just for Matthew and Brenda, but for everyone they inspired. Because sometimes, the greatest victories aren't trophies or fame. They're the hearts restored, the lives uplifted, and the love that grows from the darkest places. Matthew looked at Brenda, who now moved freely and confidently among the students, laughter spilling from her lips. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not for the fame, not for the victory, but for the chance to witness someone reclaim their life, to be part of a story that proved, even from hunger, pain, and loss, love can grow, flourish, and change everything. Together, they stepped outside for a moment, snowflakes dancing around them, catching in their hair, melting against warm skin. The city stretched endlessly, filled with lights, noise, and life. But in that quiet moment, there was only them. Matthew squeezed her hand. "Merry Christmas," and every day after. Brenda leaned in, smiling softly. "Merry Christmas," and yes, every day after. The snow fell gently around them, a silent witness to new beginnings, second chances, and the enduring power of heart, resilience, and connection. And in that winter night, under the glow of city lights, they both knew this was just the beginning of everything.